Geelong is the second largest city in Victoria, Australia. It's located just southwest of Melbourne, and it's also another city on the bay. There is a regular train service and a 4-lane road called the Prince's Freeway. There's plenty to see and do in Geelong, like the Geelong Botanic Gardens, the National Wool Museum, Willy Wonka's Little Creatures Brewery, the Old Geelong Gaol, the Moolap Salt Works orange-bellied parrot, the Iron Store, and not to be outdone by the European counterparts, Geelong has the Ovoid Aqueduct, which graciously spans the Barwon River. But the big feature these days is the foreshore. It's right at the edge of town, just in front of Deakin University's waterfront campus. Steam Packet Quay is located at the end of Moolap Street, a nice little docking place for many types of watercraft. It's also the spot where the City of Geelong plants its floating Christmas tree and light show. If you stand at the quay and look back over Corio Bay, you'll notice on the left the Corio Shell Refinery. It adds a bit of contrast to the view and provides the climate alarmists with another couple of smokestacks to photograph. Looking further behind the refinery is a couple of hills commonly referred to as the Yuyangs. Cast your gaze to the other side of Corio Bay and you should be able to see Point Henry and the remains of the old disused Alcoa aluminium plant. The place closed down in 2014 after 51 years of dutifully providing yet another bunch of smokestacks for the avid environmentalist. It's claimed that during its operation, the smelter produced enough aluminium to make more than 490 billion cans, or 93,000 jumbo jets. Must admit, I've never seen a jumbo jet with Alcoa stamped on the side of it, so I lean more to the report of the 490 billion cans. On the immediate left of Steam Packet Quay is Cunningham Pier, probably the most iconic structure on the Geelong waterfront. Opened in the mid-1850s, it was a vital part of the Port of Geelong, originally known as Railway Pier because that's where the railway used to load and unload its cargo. It's no longer suitable for modern ships, and as a result, it now lives its life primarily as a function venue. You know the sort of thing, weddings, birthdays, and other types of formal disasters. Left of the pier is the boathouse. Built on a 100-year-old barge, it's a family-run joint and sells mostly fish and chips to the daily punter who just wants to sit there and stare at the water for a while. It also runs a bistro and function centre for those with a slightly different requirement. To the right of the pier is the Carousel. It's a wonderfully restored 19th century steam-driven merry-go-round, complete with an 1898 organ supplying the music. People who are disabled might care to take note that they have a mobility lift and, more importantly, a recharge point. The mobility lift enables a wheelchair to go on the carousel and was specifically designed to not look out of place with the rest of the ride. Further along is what they call the Steam Packet Gardens. It's just a big green grassy space with uninterrupted views of the bay. It's the place where they run events, including the monthly arts and craft market. The rest of the time, it's just a good spot to sit and have a picnic. All along the front is a small walkway with seats you can sit on to watch the refinery tankers come and go. There's also a collection of unusual buoys, the floating type, not the ones you see in those special parades. Here's a bunch of people, all running to get back to the office before closing time. Oh no, they've all forgotten their mobile phones. And look at this lot, playing a quick round of table tennis. The loser obviously going to pay for lunch. Now, Yarra Street Pier is located at the end of Yarra Street, obviously. It's another spot that features a number of restaurants, as well as being the departure point for the helicopter. Looks like one of the local cafes is running low on avocado, as they've sent the helicopter to pick up a couple more. This possibly explains why, when you walk into a restaurant and see avocado listed on every single dish, the price is more likely to be a fraction higher. When the helicopter is not being used to freight avocados, it's often used to take passengers on scenic flights around the area, or maybe for privately funded avocado pickups. The Bay City Marina and the Royal Geelong Yacht Club are right next door. The Yacht Club is known for being the home to the Festival of Sails, which is the largest sailing regatta in the Southern Hemisphere. It also hosts the Wooden Boat Festival. They've got Learn to Sail days and all the usual boaty stuff for those who want to give it a crack. Next to the Yacht Club is the largest travelling Ferris wheel in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, I don't want to put ideas in anybody's head, but it's possibly a great place for young chaps to propose. You know how it goes. Get down on one knee, hold her hand, gaze longingly into her eyes, and then say the magic words,
"Can we get off this thing? I'm feeling sick."
Even further along, we get to the beach itself, Eastern Beach Reserve. It's the closest thing Geelong has to an ocean beach. Enormously popular with sunbathers who literally fight for space on the sand, all busy soaking up vitamin D by the bucket load. At the far end of Eastern Beach is the shark-proof sea baths, fish-type sharks I mean. They look quite wonderful, surrounded by historic Art Deco-style boardwalk. Built in the 1930s, the sea baths include a number of floating islands and play equipment. They've also got a large diving tower. And, just one small tip, up the hill is the daytime car park, which saves you constantly having to worry about parking meters. Geelong's version of Stonehenge. It's just on the way to Limeburners Point and the public boat ramp. Allegedly, it's the spot the local lads go to do their burnouts. Now, all of this info is wonderful, but what the Geelong foreshore is really famous for is a bunch of old timber pylons from a city pier demolished in the 1980s. The Bay Walk Bollards is what they get called. There's more than 100 of the things. All have been painted to depict the story of characters who have been involved in the history and making of Geelong. You can purchase a book from the carousel at the waterfront that tells the story and explains everything if you want it. This one represents the Geelong Volunteer Fire Brigade, infamous for failing to save a burning ship called the Lightning in 1869 due to faulty equipment. Apparently their one and only hose split right down the middle. The 1930s were big on beauty competitions, and Geelong Beach was a popular venue, hence these classy chicks in bathing costumes. Another group display of older style bathing costumes, which were also commonly found at the beach. Here's a rather glamorous couple who, in their day, may have attended the car rallies and speed trials. Oh, a rugged Geelong footballer, ready for practice, as was common in those days in one of the nearby fields. A very early group of Eastern Beach lifesavers. It apparently includes Billy Coit, who is responsible for giving swimming lessons to many generations of Geelong's children. The infamous Geelong Baths Swimming Club, who gained notoriety during early regattas for being especially good at greasy pole competitions and racing in tubs. The good old Joy Arc sandwich board man, the first moving billboard for Geelong's silent picture movie hall. The Joy Arc also became a fashionable place for dancing and roller skating, often in fancy dress. The lime burner man, shovel in hand, working at one of Geelong's earliest industries, exporting burnt lime to Launceston in Tasmania. Good old Matthew Flinders, reported to be the first person to sight the Yuyangs, thus making the assumption that all Indigenous people are completely blind. He must have pulled this scam off quite well though, because they named a pub after him. Mrs. D. Carteret. Must have been French, because she owned a business called La Cabine, which means the cabin. I think it means that in French. Apparently, all it took for her to gain notoriety was to be a dab hand at making lemon squash. Some guy sucked in by the Joy Arc sandwich board man, his costume inspired by good old Jules Joseph Perrault, a dancer and choreographer who later became beatboxer of the Imperial Ballet in St. Petersburg, Russia. This one represents a Portuguese explorer who allegedly landed long before either Captain Cook or Matthew Flinders. So it's not just the Indigenous people who are completely blind, because apparently the Portuguese didn't see the Yuyangs either. Now here's a couple of likely lads. Robert Johnson, not to be confused with the guitar-playing legend, but simply Mayor of Geelong and namesake of Johnson Park. The other is Ian MacDonald, a Geelong surveyor, mostly responsible for cranking up the plans and somebody we can all thank for being involved in the Eastern Beach Complex. Here we have a sailor, returning from World War II, attempting to gain the affections of a potential blushing bride by surprising her with a low-budget gift he purchased in some port on the way home. These three started in the early 1800s, trying to flog scallops and fish. If you take a quick look behind them, you'll see that not much has changed. These two are both captains. The grumpy one on the left, allegedly called Jerry, is the captain of a sailboat. As you can see, he's bringing Monty Python's dead parrot to hang in the nearby botanical garden aviaries. The other is a captain of the steamship SS Edna, which was one of the longest-serving steam vessels anywhere in the world. The Edna had 2 narrow escapes from destruction when she collided with other steamers. Both got sunk. By 1924, Edna had made over 12,000 Melbourne to Geelong passages and carried over 1 million people. These bollards depict the variation over the years of lifesaver swimming costumes. Notice how everything got shorter as time went on, including the people. This one's meant to resemble a 1940s Geelong tram conductress. Apparently, chain-smoking whilst knitting was a popular pastime on the trams. Wonder how OH&S went with that one. This one honours Stephen Durnley, or Old Number One as he was affectionately known. He was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for his services to sailing and motorcycling. He served in the Royal Navy, then became a senior editor for an Australian publisher. But what he will most likely be remembered for is founding the motorbike club for people with arthritis, hemorrhoids, Alzheimer's and sight deficiencies, commonly known as the Ulysses Club. It's a motorbike club for older folk who actually want to try and live longer. Now, Stephen didn't believe in an afterlife and said, "Our true immortality is the dust our footsteps leave on others as we walk for a brief time on this fragile planet." And he must have had a bit of a sense of humour, because on leaving to his body to science, he was quoted as saying, "Well, at least I'll finally go to university." Here's a bunch of Geelong sea bathing swimmers from around 1870 practicing their unsuccessful life-saving technique, mainly due to a lack of rope in their winch and the person at the rear not really paying attention to what they're doing. Bay bathing was always a popular pastime in Corio Bay, but in the quest of preserving modesty, Western Beach was reserved for the gentlemen and the Eastern Beach for the ladies. But fortunately, some dastardly sods apparently did not observe the rules, and as a result, Geelong's population continued to flourish. The Volunteer Rifle Band, with not a single rifle between them. They were Geelong's first band to ever play concerts in the Botanic Gardens, hammering out such popular songs such as It's a Long Way to the Top, Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again, Great Southern Land, I Still Call Australia Home, A Pub with No Beer, and Waltzing Matilda. The Western Beach Sea Bathing Company swimmers, who apparently were all politicians by the look on their faces, featuring Gordon Scholes, Ian Trezise, John Howard, Jeff Kennett, and Sir Hubert Obermann. Now, I don't want to point out the obvious, but they all had really crappy dress sense when they went to the beach. A lady holding the trophy won by the winning yacht at the first ever Geelong Regatta. Not much has changed really. With a hat like that, she'd do just as well at the Melbourne Cup on track fashions. As far as the City of Geelong goes, this is the King Bollard. He's the real money maker in the whole Geelong waterfront. He's quiet, considerate, punctual, and only requires that you remortgage your house to pay the parking fees while you have a cup of coffee. Just to let you know, there's plenty more of these bollards, but I need to finish the video. So in closing, let me just say, go and check out Geelong's shorefront. It's really a great place for a coffee stop, or even better, try and spend a day there.